So welcome to this conversation today. The discussion today is on the rise of generative AI and its practical impacts on monitoring. Thank you for the confirmation that screen share and everything is working. I appreciate it. This is a very cool platform, by the way. I have really enjoyed it. And for those of you in attendance, if you haven't had a chance to go wander around Gather Town for a bit, I've had a great conversation with Bruce from Squared Up this morning. Went over and said hello to the folks over at OpsLogix. So it's been a very fun little platform to be able to kind of walk around and see what's going on and all that type of stuff. So that's been whole lot of fun. I'm glad that they put this together. So what we're going to talk about today, however, is generative AI and what it actually means to our industry in terms of monitoring. So for background, most of y'all may be familiar with who I am, maybe not. So quick round there. My name is Cameron Fuller. I have been in the SCOM monitoring space for quite a long time at this point in time. I'm a former 16-year cloud and data center management MVP. And within my organization, my heavy focus for pretty much since the release of generative AI has been that technology and what impacts we're going to have for that with regards to monitoring. So first, by the way, I owe a huge shout out to Blake, who helped be my sounding board for this. So Blake, if you're out there in the audience, raise up a cheer, man. Appreciate it. And here's today's agenda. We're going to talk about what we do as SCOM or Azure monitoring folks, what that looks like, what AI actually brings to the table and can bring to the table, and what are the practical impacts of AI monitoring. So if anyone is curious, that cool little graphic that you see of me down there in my image, that's what AI thinks I look like or would like to represent that I look like. That's not actually what I look like, obviously, but I like it a lot. So I've stolen it as my new headshot going forward. So with that, let's get into this. So first off, this is an attempt to be able to summarize about 30 years of monitoring experience in SCOM and in Azure into a single slide with some concepts. So what do? We being the cumulative of us as a group of people out there in the monitoring space. So first off, we watch things. I think y'all know this. We watch for relevant alerts that occur on conditions or in dashboards, that we might have a dashboard up and running that we're keeping an eye on that goes on a screen that's telling us if something goes red, yellow, or if it's in a green state. That's common in terms of things that we do, right? Additionally, we look for things to watch. So we want to identify additional items that we may need to get alerted on. Hey, this could be us, in the SCOM space, writing a custom management pack or writing our own custom alerts or rules or monitors, or it could be something that we're going to visualize. We're going to create a new dashboard, something that's going to go into Squared Up or the pre-built SCOM dashboards or Grafana or something like that. That's going to let us, take a look at whatever's going on within our environment. So we look for those things that we need to be able to watch, because while these platforms provide monitoring, oftentimes they're a base set of monitoring that we may have to customize related to what our individual customers actually need. So that shouldn't be surprising to anything. Then we try to fix problems. This is either ourselves or by bringing in other team members for situations like this. So we found a problem with DNS, hey, maybe we can help. Maybe we've got, between some of the pre-built knowledge that's out there, maybe we can provide recommendations or potentially even troubleshoot or fix a problem. Oftentimes it's not, it's us reaching out to another team that's responsible for that and letting them know, hey, this is occurring. This might help with it, bringing it to their attention. But we try to make things better, right? We try to fix things that occur. And we try to be productive or proactive. Thank you. Sorry. We try to fix things before they break. This is an overused analogy that I will continue to overuse, in terms of like on-school or onshore, on-prem SQL, or even cloud-based SQL as an example. If you run out of disk space on the data drive that you're running on, that database is going offline. It's far better to know a week or two in advance that a database server is going to run out of disk space than it is to actually have it occur and have it run out of space and have that problem occur. So proactiveness is a key piece of what we want to strive towards. And that's an area that's quite challenging for transparency. We'll talk more about it as we make our way through today. And we monitor the monitor itself. We need to know if the tooling that we're using is working. or if it's too quiet, as an example. That could be SCOM, could be Azure Monitor, log analytics. We need to know if our underlying tooling itself is working. So what I've done in essence in this is kind of broken this down into these 5 major patterns of things that we work on in the monitoring space. Now, the importance of today is really where generative AI fits in each of these different areas. So let's start with a high level on key benefits of generative AI and what it brings to the table. So there's 5 major areas that I believe are of assistance as we're looking at this from a monitoring perspective. The first is this concept of a virtual assistant, something that can help you with whatever situation you're in, to be that kind of sounding board or that assist to be able to work through things. Those virtual assistants, we're already used to them in some capacity. Rudimentary versions of these we see within, Siri and Alexa and Google, Google's assistant that they've got right now. But generative AI really brings that to the next level where you can go far past what you can do with current virtual assistants right now. We can also go into predictive analytics. So this is looking at, that low disk space condition that I mentioned as an example, being able to predict if it's going to be a problem before it's going to be a problem. And that's a challenging area, far more challenging. Those of you who have lived it, within the monitoring space know how challenging this is. There's not a lot of good tooling that really help in this space. The third is around this concept of anomaly detection. So if you're watching a system has a normal behavior associated with it. It may be very normal for a system to spike up, say on CPU and hold, for 5 or 10 minutes, but it's not normal for that same CPU to spike once a day and then hold for 3 or 4 hours. That's what we call an anomaly. So that's looking at standard behavior associated with your particular application or your server or your services and seeing within there, hey, something unusual has occurred that might require human intervention. Fourth area is around coding assistance, being able to more quickly develop code. And code can mean a whole lot of different things. We're going to delve into samples on that one today. But when you think coding, don't necessarily think just things like C#. You could be thinking about things like Custo if you're in the Azure Monitor space or log analytics space. That could be PowerShell. That could be even down to JSON or XML. All that, when it's all said and done, is really just code. Additionally, they brought in some great capabilities. The 5th major area is around image and video analysis. So the ability to be able to take a screenshot of something or watch a video and actually identify actions that have occurred within that. And all of these different benefits, in essence, are available effectively 24/7 by 365, or nearly available that entire time frame. As human beings, we have this concept of sleep, or hopefully we do. We also have this concept of work, which fits within a certain realm of hours as well. That doesn't necessarily apply to generative AI, which is one of the ways that you really want to think about how that changes your business. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take those 5 core areas that I talked about in terms of what we do as monitoring people and bring that home with generative AI. Think of this as kind of a, hey, what could we do here? What are practical ways that we could actually change how we do these jobs? So the first is around this, concept of we watch things, this anomaly detection. So anomaly detection, well, the example that I mentioned as an example, was what a normal behavior is for CPU, right? Okay, that may not be the only approach to how we use anomaly detection. I'd like to postulate the idea of what about using alerts themselves as a source for anomaly detection. As an example, it may be normal for me to get, and we'll take the CPU example, CPU spike alerts may occur on an average 4 or 5 times a day on a particular system, depending on how well we've tuned that system within SCOM or Azure Monitor. If I get 80 of those, that may represent a question, again, to be able to raise to a human attention to go, okay, something unusual is occurring here. This anomaly has been detected in the behavior. So think of it as almost like meta alerting. So alerts that actually look at your alerts as a data source. So that's one of the first things I would like to postulate as a consideration. The next one is around alert tuning. So let's again take my CPU example here that, it may be normal behavior for 5 minutes during a day that it's going to be above a certain threshold. Okay. As a human being, I have to be able to look at that and figure out, okay, what is normal behavior and how do I define what an effective threshold is going to be on that in SCOM or Azure Monitor? Well, what you can actually do is you can use the capabilities that exist within AI to let it make that threshold decision or let it be a sounding board or a second perspective for you. So if you haven't tried this yet, this is a really cool trick to do. Go grab a screenshot of your favorite dashboard that you've got within SCOM that may potentially be representing a threshold or something that you may want to tune. You put that in, and you can actually take that picture, put it into Copilot or ChatGPT or your large language model of choice, and it can actually look at that and go, "Hey, here's what I'm seeing within this, and based upon that, here's a potential threshold that you may want to set." It's really about just providing it with the graphic that you've got, as well as your general idea of what your thresholds look like. Hey, I define a critical CPU at greater than 95% for a period of more than 5 or 10 minutes, something like that, right? So you can leverage it in that capacity. And then you can also look at this from a computer vision perspective. I'm going to go way, way old school on the group here for a bit. Hopefully most of y'all will recognize this, but back in the day, there used to be a great crew that had developed a coffee pot monitoring management pack, right? And that management pack would actually notify them. It looked at and could see a coffee pot and could say, "Hey, based upon the level of coffee within this pot, if it's too low, we're going to raise an alert," right? It was a classic example of somebody really stepping outside of the box of what we think about in a monitoring space. And it's practical, not in terms of its idea of, hey, we really need a coffee pot monitoring management pack, but it's practical in terms of the ideas that it brings to the forefront to be able to think about. So what about if we take this and applied it to facial recognition and security in our data centers? The ability to be able to look at our data centers and see who's coming into them. Is this somebody who should be allowed in there or not? Okay. And for those of you that are interested in some of the newer models that are out there, the GPT-4o stuff adds computer vision as a direct source of input. So if you haven't already kicked the tires on that, go take a look at that at ChatGPT's website and see what they've got out there, because it opens up that possibility even better. Second big area is around looking for things to watch, right? I mentioned this coding existence concept, all right? So coding existence, if we look at, let's take SCOM here for a minute. We look at generation of monitors, rules, and alerts, really, and even MPs, realistically, they're in XML. That's just a series of XML code that has already been developed. So if you want to be able to leverage your large language models, you can tell them, as an example, I'm looking to write a management pack for SCOM. And within that, I want it to be able to, to monitor. Let's take an Azure workload as an example, Azure Synapse. All right, so I want to be able to do this, and then I can provide a sample of what the code looks like for a management pack and let it actually do the initial development on that. Now, it's not going to be 100% most likely. It's going to give you a starter point, but it's an interesting area, and I'm really curious, and maybe we'll talk about this later on as we go into further discussions. But if other vendors are looking at this. Same concept here on code generation for dashboards. Dashboards in most cases are just written in JSON files. JSON file is effectively just code. So it is very possible that somebody could actually put in, or you could use your own existing large language models to do code generation for dashboarding solutions. Again, same concept as what we talked about within coding for XML applies within JSON. It's just a different structure for the data. Then as we look into virtual assistants, we can come up with recommendations for new alerts or management packs, something that can actually look across, connect into your current systems and go, hey, this is what you're currently monitoring, but here's what I believe you're missing at this point in time. And then being able to take that and say, hey, the practical examples is one that I'm working on right now. I need monitoring for Synapse in Azure. Well, what does that look like? My sounding board for this was a large language model. I went through and said, hey, I need to monitor, Synapse in Azure. What are key things that I'm looking for there? And I use that as a back and forth sounding board to be able to come up with a structure of, okay, what's really key, and delving into that in essence. So it's a way to be able to use this to provide a second perspective. The next big thing we try to do, third section, is we try to fix problems. Virtual assistants can help with this. Event management type solutions. And I put links in here for existing stuff here. Event management can be used to determine, in essence, what needs to actually go to tier one or potentially go to tier two. You know, stepping in. This is the big shift that I would put towards where I think enhancements in SCOM and Azure Monitor can go, pushing this AI piece to the beginning of the cycle of assessment of a situation. So looking at this and saying, hey, I want to use AI to look across my environment and have it provide that first level tier one or two, that what's going to surface up to tier two, that's going to look and see, hey, based upon my entire environment, here's what I see either through anomaly detection or what I'm seeing through conditions that I had predefined that I'm going to tell that AI about. That in turn is going to whittle out a lot of the noise and a lot of the duplicate alerts that I may get. Let it determine what is important enough to be able to bring up to tier one. So got several great folks on here today and in attendance today that have actually been heavily involved in this. So there's folks over at Grip Matrix and over at OpsLogix as well as Microsoft is starting to step into this place with Copilot for Azure. It's the ability to kind of give you assistance within Azure to figure out, hey, I've got a condition. What do I do with that condition? Okay. So there's, good stuff in the community already here. I do see great room for improvement and next steps of what can be able to do to really, again, push that AI engine higher up in the process or earlier in the process. So it's looking at your environment and figuring out, okay, this is unusual, or this is something that either, again, is unusual or matches a predefined set of conditions that I've identified for it. And you can also use this to provide coding assistance, resolving problems in scale, at scale with code. I've got a problem that was identified within my environment. This particular registry key needs to be set within all of these different systems because it's been identified as a security problem that needs to occur. It's great usage, again, for the capabilities of large language models to be able to help you to hack that code out quickly. Hey, give me a PowerShell script that will do this. Great. Now I can go ahead and leverage that within my environment to be able to go resolve problems that I've got out there, that fixing problems type deal. So large language models and generative AI in general has a lot of capabilities to be able to really fix some of the problems that we've got today. And then we try to be proactive. And this is a tough one. And you see this, the try within these as well, because these are uphill battles, So first is, let me tell a story. I was spending some time trying to figure out a bottleneck situation, determining if, as an example, I think it was the memory one that I went through to figure out, okay, is this system going to be memory bottlenecked in the next couple of weeks? And transparently, that is ridiculously complicated. And I will go so far as to say, not even technically viable in the tooling that we have in place right now, either on-prem or in Azure, based on my experiences and in the Microsoft spots, right? So I went through and I said, okay, I'm gonna start with Kusto. Kusto's got anomaly detection and it's got forecasting and trending. I used all that. Not very effective. Wasn't able to give me a really good answer to what I needed. I took it to Excel. Not very effective. Couldn't give me the answers that I needed. Took it to Power BI. Okay. I was since told by one of my AI people, well, yeah, if you took it to a machine learning type deal and did these types of things, there are solutions that exist outside of the monitoring community, but it's going to be a pretty heavy lift to answer that question. And transparently, I was very frustrated because if you're looking at thousands of servers, it is not viable for somebody to effectively look at a graphic dashboard or look at the underlying data and alerts and really identify across a bunch of systems, what's my most important ones? Which ones are really going to memory bottleneck? So out of frustration, this is early on when I was learning large language models, I took a screenshot of my dashboard and I uploaded it to GPT, ChatGPT and Copilot. And the result came back was very impressive. So this is actually showcasing the new GPT 4.0 version that came out right now. They're intentionally small, but you get the idea. You have a dashboard, okay? From that dashboard, I told it what I wanted it to do. I wanted it to assess, are there bottlenecks related to this that I need to be aware of, okay? And here's what it came up with. Very impressive. So frequent high memory usage identified, possible causes related to it, highlights the need to be able to investigate high memory usage. So AI was able to do what I can do as a human being in terms of I could look at that same dashboard and I could identify if this is a system that based upon my thresholds is going to potentially be a problematic on a longer term trend. But to be able to put this to a machine and have it do that same thing is from my perspective, a huge game changer. By the way, I owe a huge shout out of thanks to Gavin Fuller, who actually did the updated forecasting pieces. My blog link is in here. It was done with an earlier version of Chat GPT and Copilot, but now we were updated that to GPT 4.0. And we'll do it again, an old school shout out here. So if anybody's old school enough that they remember a presentation that I did where we navigated SCOM dashboards with a Microsoft Connect, the ability to move your body to be able to actually move into a dashboard. Gavin actually helped me with that dashboard, that solution back in the days, and he's even helping me now with things like this today. And then in virtual assistants. So the virtual assistants, as we pull this all together, gives you the ability to now do asset right sizing recommendations. So something that can look at either the graphics of the trend or the history or an underlying set of data for the trend and the history and look back and do a right sizing assessment. So it's difficult work to be able to do, but again, we're able to do this type of thing now. So as an example, if that's on-prem, that may very well mean adding some resources to it. If it's in Azure, that may mean scaling to a different type of actual system. But that ability to be able to find out, am I oversized or am I undersized with regards to a particular system? This virtual assistants open up that new type of capability. And then we monitor the monitor. This virtual assistant potential on this as well. The ability to be able to look at this and say, hey, what's a pattern change? So monitoring my SCOM or Azure Monitor environments to go, I normally get this much data, or I normally get this many alerts. If something's wrong, I can actually use a large language model to look from the outside and go, wait, something's different. Our behavior has changed, or again, is anomalous. But this time looking at it on the monitoring platform itself level. So it's a potential to do a monitor the monitor in an entirely different method using your large language model to actually perform that action. And then what about if you just need a sounding board? Hey, let's say you're new to SCOM, you inherited a SCOM environment, it hasn't been maintained in the last several months. You're going to start working with this. Hey, what are some recommendations that you would have in terms of what to do with this? All right. So we're in a 10,000 foot view this for a minute, but this is the concept of actually creating a persona. Okay. So within a large language model, you'll hear this as prompt engineering. I may be cross-referencing terms incorrectly. I'm calling it a persona. I've also heard this concept as prompt engineering. I think it's a little bit of both. But what I actually did is using a large language model, I defined a persona that I called SCOM Buddy. So SCOM Buddy actually is someone who has experience with SCOM. They have worked with it before. It's kind of like, the analogy that I use for large language models is the idea that if you had a best friend who had read the whole internet that you can go chat with, right? So SCOM Buddy is that same person, but they're really focused on SCOM. All right. So if we look at this, I asked that question that I mentioned, that I've inherited an existing SCOM environment and the rest of it, and it gave me a pretty good answer. Evaluate the environment. Hey, we even get some good shout outs for some folks that we know here and the rest of it. It's a pretty good response, right? But then I went and I did the same query, but I said, I want you to answer this as SCOM Buddy. And the answer from my perspective as a SCOM engineer and Azure Monitor engineer is much better. So it was able to look here and figure out, hey, what would a SCOM engineer really say in this situation? So sometimes getting the answer you need out of a large language model is really a lot about how you ask the question. So I'm really curious to see where this will go over time, if we will actually start to get different personas that may even get shared in GitHub and things of this nature of how do you get the best answer out of your large language model for your particular situation. So all of that is a whole lot of possibilities. So let's talk about what to look for and monitoring and tooling specifically. So first off, you want to look for who's already delivered AI solutions out there or co-pilots. Who's got an actual track record of having put something in the market. And I would go so far as to say you've got some good folks on, again, in today's conversations in your community that you could point to. I've referenced a couple of them earlier on in the conversation. They may not have been AI as we think about AI at that point in time. In some cases, they actually are, but they're kind of your ones to look towards and go, okay, where are you going with this? Because you go to people who have successfully delivered in the past. Second is you want to look at who's officially embracing AI in their roadmap. Who's willing to put a stake on, a piece of paper out there, electronic in this case, and say, you know what, hey, we're going to go do AI as part of our solution, as part of our monitoring solution. Who's really claiming that and willing to step up and put it on their roadmap? If you don't have those two situations, it's who's leading the conversations around AI and monitoring. Okay. This is, we're, internally to our organization, by the way, we provide monitoring for thousands of systems out there, and we do it through a solution that we do on top of Azure, and top of Azure Monitor specifically. The reason why I can have these types of conversations is we are having these conversations internally. We're developing the roadmaps. We're working on where are we going to leverage AI in our own particular monitoring strategy. So take that same idea and look for who's out there that can really converse on this topic and can truly speak to it in this space. But again, going back to where the rubber hits the road on this, you want to really focus on who's doing it versus who's just talking about it. Okay. It's pretty easy to be able to talk through these concepts. Much more difficult to actually put something out there that you're going to put your company stamp on and say, this is what we have. All right. So all of that coming together, let's pull it back. And, this is where I personally believe AI is going to impact monitoring. And we're going to best explain this through the analogy of microwaves and turkeys. So I'm intentionally going to lake that bait because that hopefully makes no sense to anyone in the audience, but let me explain. Back in the day, when they introduced microwave ovens, you were going to use them for everything. You were going to use them to cook your Thanksgiving turkey. Okay, fast forward to reality today. Microwave ovens are a key piece of pretty much every different kitchen that's out there right now. We know the things they're good at, right? They're good at reheating leftovers. They're good at making coffee or tea, things of that nature. If you need something that's going to be a hot beverage, we have learned where microwaves are relevant within the kitchen experience. The same thing is going to occur within AI. Right now, there's a whole lot of AI can be used for everything on the planet. And to a degree, that's true. To a degree, it may not be true. It's, again, back to the microwaves and turkeys analogies. It's kind of like cloud computing. We saw initially they were saying everything's going to the cloud. Based on existence of today's crowd, I would say that may not actually be the truth. What we found is certain workloads work really well in the cloud, certain workloads do not, and that's great, and we adapt accordingly. But all of this is said and done combined into the concept of this is the fastest evolution we've ever seen in IT. If we fast forward back to when I started, or scroll back to when I started 30 years ago, pace of change was relatively slow. We would get a new release every couple of years. Cloud really moved this up where we started going the speed of, it can be changing almost all the time. AI is on an exponential trend at this point in time, whereas it's so fast that it's difficult to even keep up as things are moving at this rate. So it's a much faster evolution, but I believe the concepts still apply. But when it's all said and done, from my perspective, strategic AI adoption will occur truly only where it makes business sense. So what I would ask to all of you in attendance at this point in time is to step back, think about what we've talked through today, and see for your organization, where does it make sense? So with that, I believe that's my full conversation for today. I hope it's been useful. Hope it has been interesting, and I look forward to having a chance to be able to chat with everybody in Q&A as we head over and get into the wonderful world of Q&A.